Welcome into the Toyota Lounge for the DNVR Avalanche Podcast, powered by your Front Range Toyota dealerships. We got Megan, we got Eric, we got Rudo coming to you live. We're ranking the top 10 players in the NHL right now today. Should be a fun one. I'm sure everyone will perfectly agree with our rankings, and there will be no angry people at all about anything because we didn't rank anyone too high and we didn't rank anyone too low in today's show. No, these rankings are fun because everybody disagrees, and, well, I don't know that anyone can really disagree with the top 3 players on the list, but...
I don't know. I feel like I was a little weird with my top 3. I want to know your initial reaction to seeing our list. Were there some eyebrow raising?
We all had the same players in the top 3.
That's incredible.
A little bit of different orders, but all had the same 3 players.
I love that.
Bottom half of the list, we got a little wild with,
love it.
for sure. So, should be fun. Before we do jump into the actual list, we did have a handful of honorable mentions. Megan tried to get some goalies on the list, but none of them quite got enough ranking. Yeah.
Oh my
Shesterkin would have been 11,
okay.
So just missed.
Okay.
But close.
Of course, I tried to get more than one goalie.
Yeah, Shesterkin and Hellebuck. Hellebuck was my 11, so also just missed. Couple of goalies on there. Really, we should do a show another day where we just do the top 5 or 10 goalies or something. So
That's a good point.
Maybe
I think
we'll
we've
do
run
that.
into this problem before
Yeah.
in summer shows specifically.
Yep.
And I'm always that holdout.
But a fair point. I don't want to gloss over that. It's not between Shesterkin and Hellebuck. I think those are the clear-cut top 2 goalies in the league right now. Not that there aren't other good ones. I know Sorokin's been very good of late.
Vasilevsky still.
Yep. But those 2 kind of just a cut above as of at least in the regular season. I won't get into Hellebuck's postseason, but certainly.
Well, goalies are in an island. You know that.
Yep.
They're by themselves. So we'll rank them by themselves. There you go. I didn't even think twice about putting a goalie. I didn't even think about it. I got to be honest. I didn't even think about it. As you're mentioning it, I'm like, huh. Yeah, maybe we shouldn't cast them away like that. Shoot. But you know what? Yeah, there should be a list of their own goal. There should be a list of their own.
Even the goalie dad forgot about the goalies.
I know.
Right?
That actually makes me feel a little bit better. Like, okay, we can just rank them separately. That's appropriate.
Yeah. Let's do that.
You did have those 2 goalies as honorable mentions that'll top their own list. Then you also had 2 centers that just missed the list in Alexander Barkov and Sidney Crosby. I had Crosby on my list at 10. I know, Eric, you wanted to put him on there, but you didn't. You put Barkov instead. So,
yeah, you know, like I've said it before. I'll say it again. I got a crush on Sidney Crosby. I mean, since he came into the league, I just love everything about his game. The way he conducts himself off the ice. He's, you know, obviously he's a winner, he's a champion, and he's still playing at a high level. I felt so bad for him last year, but that they didn't make the playoffs, and I don't know. I had to put him on the list I sent you, and I got him just on the outside because I felt bad for not putting him in there. But yeah, we'll get to those like 7, 8, 9, and 10, and I'll say why I didn't put him there.
They both are in my honorable mentions, but neither made my top 10. Probably because I had all those goalies. But both Barkov and Crosby. Crosby, just with the leadership and his contributions still at this stage in his career to the Pens, and Barkov continues to be such a complete player for Florida. It's hard to leave those 2 out of this list. I just think if there were a list of like most complete, well-rounded players, I think the top 10 would look a little different and include both of those.
For sure. The Barkov especially with the well-roundedness. With Crosby, I don't think he's a top 5 player anymore. But if you had him in the bottom half of your top 10, I wouldn't have a strong argument against it. He's still that good. So no complaints about either of those guys.
I wouldn't argue you, that's for sure. I can't believe I didn't put him in. I mean, like I didn't put goalies and I didn't put Crosby in there. So my bad on both.
It's hard. We're trying to narrow it down to top 10 guys, and at number 10 spot, there's probably 15 to 20 dudes you could make a good argument for.
It's true. There's different ways each guy can be good and elite at what they do. And even just positionally between a forward and a defenseman, it becomes hard. There's some defensemen that I really liked that didn't even make my honorable mentions list. And I have like 15 honorable mentions.
Who else? Who do we have in this honorable mentions? Let's hear some of the good ones.
All right, hold on. Okay. I have Mikko Rantanen in my honorable mentions.
Okay, he made the list for the record.
Adam Fox is in my honorable mentions.
He was one of mine too. Yeah.
Roman Josi,
Yeah.
Bassey, Panarin, Barkov, Quinn Hughes.
Yeah.
That's kind of the gist of it. There's Kaprizov in there somewhere. I still really like him. I have Jack Hughes in there. Maybe I was just getting too carried away with that family.
I think that's fair. I like that you have, because I think you're spot on. There's a number of defensemen that it feels like are just outside that top 10.
Was one that didn't make my honorable mentions, but I feel really strongly about. He's another really complete player, and it just makes it hard because he doesn't have the standout skill of Cale Makar, but he's right there.
Yeah. Just a little bit down from Makar skill-wise, but also has that size aspect to his game and is super well-rounded. Agreed, 100%. E, did you have any other honorable mentions?
Did you say Bedard? He's just not there yet.
Bedard.
But, you know,
yeah, too early for that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, when you think of the future of the league, you're thinking of him, you know.
For sure.
Couldn't put that in there yet, you know, too small a sample. But hopefully he has one of those years where next year we're like, okay, he's arrived. You know what I mean?
I'd rather have him kind of stink, to be honest, given that he's playing in Chicago.
Oh, you're always thinking. You're always thinking, Rudo.
Got to be a homer at least some of the time, okay? So look, if you really are pounding the table for any one guy to be somewhere in the top 10, unless you're really going off the rails with your pick, I probably don't have a strong argument against it. You could put a number of dudes at 10 or 9 or even like 8. So fair enough on that. For our lists, we all picked our own top 10s and then aggregated those lists. We can kick it off with number 10 here. And that ended up being Artemi Panarin at number 10. I had him at 7, I think, which was what carried him onto this list. Hey, look, Panarin is in a group of a handful of wingers that you could have put in this range, I think. The thing for me that separated Panarin and why he ended up in our top 10 is his ability to drive play in New York. There are not a lot of wingers that can really drive play at the level that Panarin does. I would argue even someone like Mikko Rantanen, who does a lot of things well, I think does a lot of things better than Panarin, maybe doesn't drive play quite as well as Panarin does. The only other guy today that does to me is Kaprizov, who you mentioned in your honorable mentions, that really comes close to that level of play driving off of the wing. And obviously this last year, Panarin stepped his game up a ton, ended up with 120 points. I don't know that he's really that guy, probably more of a 95 to 100 point player most years, but he certainly has plenty of tricks in the bag. So for me, Panarin makes number 10, and I'm sure you could make an argument for someone like Zibanejad out of New York as well, but Panarin was the only one really close to this top 10 list for me out of New York. So he does it a little bit by himself out there too.
He's a really gifted playmaker. His vision, his passing.
Yeah.
He made my honorable mentions for a reason. It did become hard, though, just among the talented wingers, because Mikko Rantanen's right in there. Kaprizov's right in there. I like the shout-out.
Yeah, I didn't have him in there. Do I like him? I love him. But, you know, like you said, it's top 10, not top 50. You know what I mean? But what I've always loved about him, and I even know what his production was this past year at 5-on-5, but I've always felt that this guy produces at 5-on-5 and produces at freaking opportunities, like right times, you know what I mean? Like at the right opportunity, you know what I mean? I just feel he's clutch. I feel that he's in a big market. I feel that he doesn't care about the big stage. He feels like he's having fun. I don't have him in the top 10. That I want to put him in the top 10? Yes. That I have him? No. But I agree with the list that he's at 10, that I feel much better. I love this player. Love him.
Yep. He once upon a time, there was a chance he could have came to Colorado, but he wanted to live on the coast, so such is life.
He would have been such a good Av.
That would have been different for sure. Good what if there, maybe. Number 9, the most recent Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers with Matthew Tkachuk. Obviously, I talked about Barkov already. Maybe not necessarily playing with each other. They do play with each other a decent amount. But Tkachuk kind of materialized as the on-ice point producer. Certainly, maybe not this last playoffs, but the playoffs before. He was insanely clutch for that Florida team. And he's established himself, I would say, as the face of that Florida team. A little bit more than Barkov has, which pushes him up the lineup a little bit. It there is a component of the guy who you see everywhere getting a little bit more play in a top 10 list like that. And he's also an incredibly solid NHL player. Solid's underrating him. He's incredible. If you're looking for the best way I've heard Matthew Tkachuk described is if you had to build a player that the hockey men would love, it would be Matthew Tkachuk. He plays the way that hockey men love hockey being played.
And he does it at such a high level. It's such a unique blend of skill and then that grit and leadership component that the hockey heads love. There's shades of Landeskog, and I don't mean to insult Landeskog, but there are things I like about Matthew Tkachuk that make him frustrating whenever he plays opposite of the Avs. And that ability to agitate opponents is kind of special to him because, to your point, to be able to do that at the level that he does is kind of special to him and a player like Landeskog.
Yeah, I think they're very similar archetypes, and unfortunately for the Avs, I think Tkachuk does it better than Landy does. Maybe not the leadership portion, but the actual hockey on-ice stuff. Tkachuk is the better player.
Well, he's very creative for a guy that mucks it up like that. Like, he can do it all. I mean, you talk to 32 NHL GMs, they'll tell you, like, he's a must-have, right? I mean, it's not like you don't even have to use the word franchise player. He's more like, if you have it, you just want it. And there's not that many. I can't say that there's one on each team. He's at an elite level where he's almost a unicorn. Like, honestly, like, to be creative like that with the puck, to be creative like in the offensive zone and make people around him better. He does. He makes people around him better. He drags people into the fight, the old expression, but he's a pain in your ass. Like, he just is. He's just annoying as it can be. You know what I mean? And what he did, which I don't necessarily agree with, is he put a lot of pressure on himself, right? By dictating a little bit, like to Calgary, hey, I'm not coming back after this next year. And then, you put the team in a tough spot. And then it brings a little bit of pressure on yourself to perform. And, because you're kind of like, telling people, this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm going, this is what I want to do. But he delivered. He delivered in high fashion. His 2 seasons there have been absolutely fantastic. I think he loves the pressure. He loves when he gets booed. He loves when he's at the center of everything. Good on him. I mean, did I think he would get to that level? No. Did I think he could do it and lead that way, like in the playoffs and everything? No. But it's nice to see, and it's looking back now. You're looking at why did Bill Zito make that move? It was a ballsy move. I mean, you got to remember, it was a ballsy move. Jonathan Huberdeau, had unbelievable seasons there in Florida, but Bill Zito wanted to change the makeup, and like the fixture in the locker room and all that kind of stuff. And that was the right key. It was the right moment. That's when they really, I believe, that trade made them go towards the Stanley Cup. And I think that was the key trade. So, you know what? He deserves to be in the top 10, like him or not, or fan of him or not. He is a top 10 player in the NHL.
Agreed.
He was my 6, which might have been a little high, but I think he's so good for the sport of hockey. He's entertaining to watch, too.
Very
the skill
true.
Upside is obvious, but also that component we're talking about that frustrates other people.
Yep.
It's really entertaining, and I think he's so good for the sport.
100% agree. We need more entertainers in hockey. I'm on with that one. And if you want to make your hockey a little bit more entertaining, you can put some money down on it with Bet365. You can go sign up for Bet365 today and use code DNVR365 when you do. You get $150 in bonus bets when you put $5 on any bet with that DNVR365 code. So then you have some free money to play with. You can go bet on Matthew Tkachuk to score a goal or something. I don't know. We're
It'll
so
be
far
annoying.
away. Yeah.
Can you bet on that?
Don't know if that's a bet. What qualifies as annoying in the betting sphere? I'm not sure if that one's on the line. I don't know. Maybe you can bet them to get a major penalty or something. You might be able to do that. That could be an option. Hockey's still a ways away, though, so make sure you're getting your bets in on preseason football, as well as you can bet on the Rapids. The Rapids are having a good time in the League's Cup. Go jump on that little fantasy run if you want to have a little bit of fun with it. Whatever you do, make sure you're betting on Bet365 with the DNVR 365 code. And, of course, when you do gamble with Bet365, you must be 21 or older, physically located in Colorado. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER today. And then when you win a little bit of money, make sure you go get yourself in the coolest shades around with Shady Rays. They've been sponsoring DNVR for a while now, and you can get 35% off any pair of polarized even sunglasses with code DNVR over at ShadyRays.com. They have hundreds of different choices of sunglasses to choose from. You can even look at the polarizations and get different colors, and maybe even choose your favorite team's colors if that's what you're into with Shady Rays. Whatever it is, they're an independent sunglasses company offering world-class products that have been given 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Guaranteed they have a style for you, and they're built to last for a reasonable price. So go check them out today at ShadyRays.com. Again, use that code DNVR to get 35% off any pair of polarized sunglasses at ShadyRays.com. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. Moving forward with our list. At number 8, we have ourselves the first Av on the list. Won't be the last Av, but the first Av. Mikko Rantanen up at number 8. And I wanted to make sure Mikko was on this list because I think a lot of Avs fans tend to get overly critical of Mikko Rantanen. Not that there isn't some justification there. I think we all believe Mikko might have more in the tank at times than what he gives, certainly in the regular season. But even still, you go look at Mikko over the last 3 seasons, and he's one of the top 10 scorers in the NHL. He's absolutely capable of producing, and not just capable, he is producing at some of the highest levels in the NHL right now. So even with some of the frustration in his game, he's had back-to-back 100-point seasons. We know he's capable of being one of the best goal scorers in the league. Yes, there is maybe more. If Mikko turns it all the way on, maybe we're talking about him in the top 5 in the NHL. But he still is that caliber of player around the league, not just an elite player for Colorado, but an elite player anywhere.
I was worried.
No, go ahead.
I'll say this quickly. I was worried I would be accused of too much bias having 3 Avs in my top 10, and so I left Mikko at 11. So, Eric, I want you to justify having Mikko in your top 10 because I'm a coward.
No, I always tell you guys, Kale's my, I'll use my line again. He's the best player on the planet. For me, Cale Makar is the best player on the planet. Now, right or wrong, that's just my opinion, right? But my favorite player is Mikko. Always been, always will be. It's not fair. It should be illegal to have hands like that and the size that he has. The combination should be illegal. You shouldn't be able to be playing in the NHL with that combo. You know what I mean? It's just wrong. It's not fair for anybody else. Again, that's another guy in freaking practice. You watch him, and it's like he'll do things, and you're like, wow. You know what I mean? What was that? You know what I mean? What the hell was that? And it's fun to watch. No, I think what the problem is with Mikko, which is not a problem, but it's his demeanor and his size, and he's called the Moose, right? So again, I said it the other day, I'll say it again. It's flagrant sometimes if he's not going 100 miles an hour, it just looks worse than, let's say, Logan O'Connor is doing the same thing. It's not as flagrant. It's not as popping. He is massive. He is powerful. Not saying that, he's a killer and then he kills people. No, he's a skilled guy with unbelievable hands and a lethal shot in a big man's body. You know what I mean? And that's what he is. And and he'll use his size to his advantage more than people think, because just coming out of corners, be able to make plays and thread the needle. Like he uses his body just in a different way. He doesn't use his body, let's say like Curtis McDermott would. You know what I mean? Like go and run into bodies or for fights or stuff like that. Mikko uses his body to his advantage. One of the best guys for me below the goal line in the NHL, because why? He's got size. He comes up with pucks, and people actually shy away from him because they're like, I won't come out, so they'll play him differently. You know what I mean? I won't come out with the puck, so I'm just going to let him have it, and that's when you're dangerous. That's when he's dangerous. All of a sudden, he's got a little bit of time and space. He can make plays. His shot is phenomenal, but his playmaking abilities are. Yeah. Again, I'm sure we'll talk about Draisaitl. It's very similar. Like those guys have shots, they can score goals, but they can pass. They can pass the puck. And Mikko's a very smart player, and he doesn't get enough credit for like a 200-foot game. And, for me, he is absolutely a top 10 player in the NHL. And, I just absolutely love the fact that there's Makar and there's MacKinnon. You know what I mean? He's always looked at as the third guy. Like Megan just said, don't want to put it in there because, we're biased. No, at the end of the day, we're not biased. I mean, the guy's an animal. Literally, he's a moose. But he's actually outstanding. And absolutely, I was just about to say that, and it says it on chat. He was playing at the heart level a couple years ago. It was unbelievable. He carried the team. For me, he was the MVP of that team that year, for all the reasons and all the key guys that were out. So he's but I know he's saying it's frustrating, but can you do that 82 games a year? Like, I don't know. I think he does it enough that this guy has, again, I'll use my line, he had a bad 100-point season this year.
He's evolved so much as a player, too, that there are early iterations of Mikko Rantanen, I think, that sometimes affect our current evaluation of him. And for me, when I take out the goalies of my list, he actually technically does fall in my top 10.
That's true.
So I feel a little less guilty. But there are so many things that I love about Mikko Rantanen and the player that he is today specifically. To be as productive as he has been now the last 2 seasons, I think he is honing in on his consistency, which has been what frustrates people the most about him. But it is because you see the high level that he does things. He is such a skilled playmaker, to Eric's point. It's so creative, and he has this knack for putting himself exactly where he needs to be to find near impossible seams. And I also love the heart. He could be a little bit of a hothead, and I also love that about him. It frustrates me at times, but I do love the heart that he plays with, the passion that he brings to the game, and I love him at 8.
If we could go up in the Toyota chat a little bit, there was a comment from Breckton who says at 10, any former Av when they're playing the Avs. If we were doing a little bit more of an abstract list, the ex-player curse would definitely make the list.
It's true.
Either that or Joe Pavelski against the Avs, one of the two. But Pavelski's retired, so he doesn't count anymore. So I think we're safe from that one. On to the next, as we get our first Av out of the way. Number 7 on the list, we have a winger that we're ranking better than Mikko in David Pastrnak. It's interesting, right? On any given day, I think Mikko or Pastrnak could be the better winger. Pasta, particularly this year, just had less around him to work with. He losing Bergeron and Krejci both in Boston. Pasta had to step up for that team, and he absolutely did. He's always been an elite goal scorer, but he also showed that he can play the passing game just as well as anyone, capable of putting up 100 points. Much more of an individual effort this year for him, it felt like, as compared to last year's, where he was still extremely good, but just had more help. The man in Boston, what do you have to say?
Well, it comes down to food all the time, right? Who doesn't like pasta? I love pasta. You know what I mean? So I love that dude. Honestly, you're talking about having fun and good for the game. And you know what? He's got some flair. He's always happy. He's always smiling. Just I think he's got a little bit of a carefree attitude, in a good way, not in a bad way. I don't think he gets stressed by much. But talk about natural goal scoring ability. I think for me, he's number 2 in the league. Number 1 is a little lower in our list here, but Number 2 is David Pastrnak. You know, I mean, I'm talking about natural goal scoring ability, the way he shoots the puck, the way it comes off his stick. Boods always talks about reading the release. There's no way goalies are lying to you if they're telling you they know where it's going. They have no idea. His release is so lethal, it's sick. It's fun to watch. He's a fun player to watch. He's got the outfits when he comes to the games, and you're right. I mean, with the absence of some guys and obviously the retirement of a couple of guys, he just makes people around them better. I mean, he just does, and he is good for the game. He's a smart player. Again, he's got smart playmaking. We tend to forget about his playmaking abilities. Now, could I flip flop him and Mikko as best? Yeah, you could. You know what I mean? They're just a little different. You know what I mean? Where he's got more. I can't even say more skill than Mikko because man, oh man, is Mikko loaded with skill. But they're just a little different, and their shots are a little different. They use their shots differently.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But they're weapons for both of them, and boy oh boy, do they know how to use them. So you could flip flop them, but what a pick that is there. He is such a fun player to watch, and what an intelligent player. Good for the game.
I love the shout out to his personality because he is a quirky one, and I do enjoy him for that. I see a lot of similarities between him and Mikko in that sense, personality-wise, so I like that about both of them, but it's the goal-scoring ability that is so standout for Pasta, and Mikko's right there too, but that 2023 season for Pasta with 61 goals was just pretty remarkable, and to follow it up with nearly 50, right at 47, is such an impressive feat. I think Mikko Rantanen's on that track. These two are so neck and neck in what they do, but it's just hard to deny how important Pasta is to the Bruins and what they're trying to accomplish.
As long as Pasta doesn't do an ad spot for Truly's or whatever, I don't know what was Mikko advertising.
It was Truly's and he deleted it.
Yeah.
Probably because he's like, I don't like this anymore. People noticed me.
Not Mikko's best work.
Yeah, I don't want to be perceived.
I never saw that one.
He deleted it. Mikko did a Truly's sponsor for 2 seconds. Yeah. He walked out of the locker room one day with a full case of Truly's. Everyone was looking at him like, you have some fun afternoon plans? It was a game day. Like, what are you getting into, Mikko? And he did this sponsorship opportunity, and it didn't last.
Maybe not the best spokesman. He was pretty deadpan about it. So. Still a good time. All right, number 6, our last true winger on this list. I don't know if I'd say the last actual winger, but last true winger. Kucherov, in the running for the MVP this year, obviously has been an unbelievable winger over the last handful of years. Kucherov is a weird one on this list because I think you could reasonably rate him higher, but I also don't know how you put him ahead of any of the guys we have ahead of him, just based on the ability that our top 5 has. So we'll make Tampa fans mad at us again, and it'll be fine. I don't care. but one of the most skilled players in the league. I do wonder at times if he runs into the same problems that Mikko runs into, where his style of play gets called out for being a little bit lazy at times. I know he's gained a little bit of a reputation for maybe not having the best mentality going into things like the All-Star game or the NHL awards, so maybe that hurts him a little bit too, but certainly on the ice, he's fun to watch.
I think he's easy, and again, sorry Tampa fans, no disrespect. I think he's easy to dislike if he's not on your team, just because of like what you just talked about, the All-Star game and things like that. He looks angry. You know what I mean? He just his face, it just looks like he's never happy. You know what I mean? And it's like, if you're not a fan of that team, then it's tough to relate to because you're like, oh man, I don't know about him, but it's hard to argue with, the record-breaking assists and whatever it is that he was, or 100 assists, or we haven't seen that a lot in the history of the league. So you got to give him his props. I mean, like, he's a good player, he's a phenomenal player, but that's it for me. That's the only reason. You're right. He's at 6, and Do I love Crosby? Yes. Would I like to put Crosby instead of him? Yes. You know what I mean? But I have to be fair. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
you know,
Crosby didn't put
he
up
deserves
140 points this year.
that's my point. You know what I mean? Like, you know, on a career, yeah, maybe different conversation. But you know, top 10 active NHL players, like the list says, you know, he's got to be on it. You know, do I think he's uh, man, do I think he's Nathan MacKinnon? No, obviously, but people in Tampa really think so, right? You know, I don't think that the Hart race was very close this year, but they tend to think that, you know, he got screwed or whatever it was, and that's fair. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but I think he's a phenomenal, amazing hockey player. But I think on that list, you're right. I can't put him ahead of anybody else that's on the top five.
It's hard
It
to
is
leave
hard.
him off the list, to Eric's point. I just, there are things, the production is obvious too, which is what makes it hard to leave him off. But you're right, everyone that comes past this point deserves to be there. It's almost a different tier of hockey player.
Yeah.
And I think Eric's call out about, in the scheme of things, we're talking about active players, and he is among the best in the league right now.
Absolutely.
You know, when we evaluate the entirety of all of these players' careers, this list probably looks different for a few people, but he's just been important for keeping Tampa competitive even outside of that kind of dynasty window at the top of that lineup.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
it's been too productive to ignore.
Yep. I have my arguments for the top five. If Kucherov is in your top five, I don't know that I'd really fight you on it, but that's where he ended up on our list. So the top five guys, I think, all deserve their spot, as we already mentioned. Before we dive into that top five list, if you need to hire, you need Indeed. I don't know if you can get a top five NHL player on Indeed, but if you're in the NHL, that you should probably be looking at free agency and not Indeed. So if you're in a normal job like the rest of us, Indeed is the place to go, with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data. And they don't just help you hire faster, they make sure you get matched with the best possible options. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. So get with Indeed, ditch the busy work, and use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with all of your candidates. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now and let them know we sent you over there on this podcast, so we get a little bit of credit too. That's Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. And once you've done your job and gotten some hiring in, make sure you kick back, relax, and get yourself a Coors Light. The beer literally made to chill. The mountains turn blue on the can, the bottle, I guess both, right? They both have it, so count it. Either way, the mountains turn blue. With Coors Light, you know, if you're having an argument about the top 10 NHL players right now, it's not that big a deal, right? In the grand scheme, it doesn't matter. You can kick back, relax, and chill. And if you want Kucherov at 3, fine. I think you're wrong, but that's cool. I'm chill with it with Coors Light. You can get it delivered right to your front door with CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Thanks to Instacart. Go get yourself the beer made to chill. Of course, Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Please party responsibly. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast, and we're jumping in to that top five with, I think, pretty inarguably the best goal scorer in the league right now, Austin Matthews. 69 goals last year, the highest goal scoring season in the NHL since Mario in 95-96. That alone is hard to argue with, and why he is where he is on this list.
Yeah, again, I was talking about Pasta there in his release, and this one is clear cut number one in the NHL at releasing the puck. He's just so, I don't know how to explain it. It's like you could be in your kitchen, you could be live at the rink, you could be at practice, and then he shoots a puck, and right away you stop everything you're doing because you're like, what was that? I mean, this is like, it's phenomenal. And the way he does it, it's so natural and it's so consistent. And, you know, we're talking about scoring goals, which is the hardest thing to do in the National Hockey League. And, he is the purest goal scorer in the league. Looks like he's going to have a little more responsibilities this year, leadership wise. But I do believe that, he's going to put up 60 again. There's no way he's going backwards. It's fun to watch. Whether you're a fan of the Leafs or you hate the Leafs, you can't help but notice a guy like that. And now to put him in the category of the Hart, conversation this year, like a lot of people were talking about, well, I'm not arguing that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's a choice. But for me, his total point production is not where it needs to be. But if we're talking about goal scoring, pure goal scoring, and pure release, and a weapon, and someone that, obviously everybody would love to have on their team. And as a coach, it's so fun to know that you have a guy like that can score from anywhere, that can put your team back in the game when you're down by a goal or two, or give you that big goal to take the lead. He's a top 5 NHL player. It's been from his first game on, when he scored 4 goals in his first game ever as a rookie, you could tell how amazing he was going to be at goal scoring, and he's certainly a goal scoring machine.
You have to have the 3-time Maurice Richard winner in the top 5 on the heels of a 69-goal season. He's just the most prolific goal scorer in the league right now. I don't have tons of belief around what the Leafs are. I'm curious to see what this era of leadership brings to the Leafs, because that has been where I have felt they are fractured and held back. And so the criticisms of the postseason play, I think, are valid, but branch out beyond just Matthews. It's just hard to deny the individual contributions to the sport. He is so skilled, and he has that quick release. Definitely belongs in the top 5.
When you think about his goal totals, how many players in the NHL don't score 69 goals in 3 seasons, let alone 1? Like, he's just so far ahead of everyone else in that goal scoring category. It's borderline unbelievable as someone who wasn't born early enough to experience the 80s goal scoring where everyone scored all the time. It's crazy to me to watch a guy score like he does. And yeah, like, is he the perfect player? No. That's why he's at 5 and not in the top 3. But I do think his defense gets a little bit underrated as well. He's a very quality defensive center that people kind of overlook because they just see the big goal number and forget about everything else. Still not enough for me to really crack the top players in the world, but he is unbelievable hockey player, no doubt. Yeah, let's see. Breckton knows what's up. Toyota chat's on it. Matthews, pretty straightforward conversation. We have a guy who scores 69 goals. He does, however, come up short to the number 4 guy. Eric, I know you talked about it a little bit earlier in the show, but number 4, Leon Draisaitl. Does he get to play next to Connor McDavid sometimes? He sure does, but he's unbelievable in his own right and is, at least on the offensive side of the puck, more well-rounded than someone like Austin Matthews.
Yeah, and that's why he reminds me so much of Mikko, you know what I mean? Because they're so big and so skilled. And like I said, I'm not going to give the same spiel about the lethal combination. It's wrong. It should be illegal. And the same thing for him. It's the same thing for Draisaitl. Best backhand saucer in the league, 100%. This guy can make a sauce on his backhand like nobody else can. And he's got the will and the swag to do it too. You know what I mean? And it goes back to Mikko as well. Forgot that, Mikko's got the swag too to try some plays that you're like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't dare trying that, but he will. And Draisaitl's the same way. And I think he's his own person. Obviously, the contract talks are going to be, something to keep an eye out there for Edmonton. And, we all know the cap hell that obviously they were. Now they have a little bit more freeway with not matching the offers. But obviously,
he'll look great in a Sharks jersey.
Yeah. Well, who knows what they're going to do, but you're starting to get some expensive guys, right, with McDavid, and I don't know what they're going to do. But he just seems like this guy beats to his own drum and doesn't, I don't think he gets too worried about things, and I think he's he's a pro, but I don't think he gets inside his own head. I think he's a warrior. He's played through some grueling stuff over the last few years to come injured time. Like I say, he's a horse. Like if Mikko's a moose, this guy's a horse. He's it's a guy you can count on. And boy, can he shoot a puck. And boy, can he shoot a puck precisely. As much as Ovechkin's got his spot, Pasta's got his spot. We all know Mikko's spot on the right dot there, right, going high glove. And this guy is like almost got his butt against the freaking boards below the goal line, and he gets that puck, and and he puts it in. You know what I mean? From almost like the goal line, and it's crazy. And he does it over and over and over again. And the pass is coming all the way across, and it gets to him, and he finds the net. I mean, that's talent. That's special. That's elite. And again, you're talking about now like top 4 best player in the world. He is in there, and you know what? It's been nice to see him, his ascension to from his first year to now, and boy, oh boy, like I mean, it's crazy to think that you're a top 4 player in the world, but you're not even the best player on your team. So that's crazy.
I don't think it's an accident that in our top 10, there are 2 sets of players that directly complement one another. And it's a rising tide lifts all ships. Like they are both individually good in their own right. And there's a reason why they make the person next to them better. And that's Draisaitl and McDavid and MacKinnon and Rantanen. And I think it's a similar conversation. Draisaitl is just such an offensive powerhouse, and there's some versatility to his game that I think he deserves credit for. And he's really tightly wound in a way that I think he channels into his hockey in a productive way. And that's not always easy for players to do, for sure. And it can make him seem a bit high-strung at times, but he uses it to his advantage, and it's a pretty obvious guy to have in this top 4 breakdown, which starts to get really hard to differentiate 1 through 3.
When I look at Draisaitl and McDavid, I just don't know how much more they can do. Like, they're doing absolutely everything for that Edmonton team. So much so that the 2 of them, Draisaitl and McDavid, pretty much, I guess you throw Bouchard in there too, but it was a very few select people that were carrying that Edmonton to Game 7 of the Cup final. If you take out Leon Draisaitl from that team, Edmonton gets eliminated in probably the first round, maybe the second round. They definitely don't make that run to the Cup final without him. So he's that critically important to the team. And his offensive ability is undeniable. I think he might end up at 4, maybe at times a touch inconsistent, maybe at times a bit weak on the defensive side of the puck. Doesn't have that truly... You look at a Nathan MacKinnon and you see a guy who just at times decides he's not going to be denied. No matter what the situation is, he's just going to go out there and win a hockey game. And I wonder if Draisaitl lacks just a little bit of that killer instinct, which is why he's at 4 instead of 2 or something like that. So massive nitpicking there. They're about as thin of a nitpick as you can get down to, but you have to split hairs to get a top 10, I guess. All right. We can move into the top 3 now. There are 2 Avs in this top 3, so I don't know if that's bias or if it's just a fact of the Colorado Avalanche are built very, very well at the top. 3rd place, the only defenseman on this list in Cale Makar. Is there anything to even say? This podcast has day in and day out said everything they need to say about Cale Makar, but even when you go beyond this podcast, this is not just a homer thing. I was watching the CHGO show the other day. They did the top 10 defensemen in the league. You know who number 1 was?
Has to be.
It was Cale Makar. They weren't even like, oh, well, you can make an argument for this guy. They're like, no, it's Cale Makar. Like, everybody just understands that Cale Makar is different.
He's revolutionizing the position. It is pretty special what he's doing for the game of hockey, but what he's doing for defensemen and how the game is being played in that position. And the trophies speak for themselves too, the Norris, Conn Smythe, and a Stanley Cup at such a young age. And he's just trending in a better direction, even on the heels of a down year, still a points high.
Yeah,
and
not just 90 points in a down year.
He's a freak of nature. It's hard not to put him at number one, to be honest. I just think
you could make an argument
we
for
would
it.
be laughed out of the building.
Yeah.
The building being some kind of NHL-wide conversation. But I think there's a case to be made for Makar at number one just because of his contribution to the sport of hockey and how he's changing the way defensemen approach the game.
Yep.
I said it the other day, he's definitely the smoothest of all skaters in the league. I didn't say the fastest. I said the smoothest. You know what I mean? Operating on edges and left, right, and, those 10-2s. And, he is like, boy, oh boy. Like, it's just outstanding. It's phenomenal to watch. I mean, we've said it all year long. We've said it all years. You guys have been talking about him for years now. Like, he is at the top of the top. You talk to former players, you talk to current players, and right away people are like, wow, this Makar is sick. It's wrong. He's just outstanding. And a lot of people have said it, and a lot of people have not backed away from it, saying now when it's all said and done, he's going to be at the top of the list. There's no ifs and buts. There's no ifs and buts about it in my mind. And I know some of the great players of our past have said this, and he's going to end up being the all-time greatest defenseman that ever played in the National Hockey League. He's that special. We are that lucky. There's no bias there. I mean, it's just, I don't know what else you can say. Like, we were nitpicking his game last year and saying that he didn't have, his greatest season. And it's a season that anybody in the history of their freaking lifetime in the National Hockey League would take. You know what I mean? Like, and that's that's how crazy we are. I mean, I'm sure he would feel the same way, but that's how good he is. And you talk about a humble person. You talk about a good leader in his way and a good teammate, and what a nice citizen. And, like I said, he just got married. We saw that on Twitter there. It just seemed like a good, wholehearted person. And, I don't think he's reached his ceiling yet, even though it's been absolutely phenomenal. I think there's more in there, and I think we're about to find out real shortly here what the ceiling can be here in the next 2-3 years for him.
I love that Megan brought up the revolutionizing of the game, because in my lifetime, I really only think of 3 players that really revolutionized hockey. It's Patrick Waugh in goal when I was young, Alex Ovechkin when I was still a teenager, and just the insane singularity of everybody plays that one-time shot now that Ovi does, and then Cale Makar, and call it the rover, call it whatever you want, and it is just unbelievable ability to use his feet and have high-end skill at the defensive position. That isn't to take away from other players, but you look at players like Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid, I think career-wise to date, both have been better than Cale Makar's career so far, but it's not like they do revolutionary things. They just do the hockey better than everybody else does. So that is a special point that I think Makar gets an extra notch in his belt for. Yeah. The other Av at number 2, obvious at this point, Nathan MacKinnon, just won the Hart Trophy for the MVP of the league, just had a 140-point season. It really found a level this year that it felt like not just the fan base, but Nathan MacKinnon himself realized, oh, I'm just better than everybody else. I'll just go do whatever I want out there. And there aren't many players in the NHL that have that feeling.
Well, it's the dog in him, right? I mean, it's like this guy wants more. You know what I mean? And I know people were shocked 2 years ago that it was his first 100-plus point season. We all know, I mean, obviously injuries have played a part in it, but I'm saying at 99, and then he gets, 111, then he jumps to this year 140, right? Crazy. And I think he can repeat it. I think he can get more. You talk about preparation, second to none. You talk about drive, second to none. You talk about wanted to live for the moment. He's one of those guys. He loves the dramatics, the flair, and I think he's hungry for more. People always talked about how he follows Crosby and for all the right reasons. We talked about Crosby at the start of the show, right? What a guy to follow, what a guy to try to emulate. And if you look at MacKinnon, then he's got, man, I only got one cup. Crosby's got three, so I got a few more to go. And Patty Waugh was wired that way. I say it all the time to you guys, like it was never enough. He wanted another one. You want another one, and once you've tasted it, guys like that, once they've tasted it, and that's why they are where they are, and their core's in good hands with a guy like that. Is that they're gonna get more. It's a matter of when and not if. They're going to get more. He's going to get more. Hopefully it's this season or, in the near future.
MacKinnon looks to the best to get better, but he's his own greatest competition. And I talk about Draisaitl being tightly wound. This is a guy who is relentless and finds every avenue to make himself better and consults the best of the best to do so, almost to a level of obsession. But I have to really appreciate his drive, and he treats hockey as his craft, constantly improving, and the evolution is evident in the season that he's just had.
Yep.
And he finally got the recognition that he deserved because he does put that work in to improve himself. Sometimes you worry about him, but he's taking care of himself in all these different ways as best he can. That he's checking in on applying a little too much pressure on himself too. It's hard not to ask that of him, though. That's just the way that he's wired, and it makes for a pretty special player. He's good at a lot of things, and so when it comes to the end of the year and you're adding up goal totals, points totals, he doesn't always come out ahead at number one, but he's always in that conversation consistently for a reason, and it's because he has these tools like his explosive speed and a pretty powerful shot and just the ability to take over games that I wouldn't say he's underrated in this aspect. It's just there have been times because of a points total being the thing that separates him from the Hart in years past. But he's belonged in that conversation every season. He's been robbed of a few because he's missed time due to injury. And I think it's finally the season of MacKinnon, just this era of hockey for him to really take over the sport in an even more obvious way. And it's hard to take that from where McDavid is at in his career as well. But those two are going to be neck and neck for many years to come.
Well, and here's the difference for the Avs players and a lot of the guys on this list. They've won. It's true of Tkachuk. That's probably why he made the top 10, is he has that cup in his back pocket now. It's true of Kucherov. He's got, obviously, a couple of cups. But you look at some of the guys down the list. Maybe the reason Draisaitl and Matthews end up at 4 and 5 instead of 2 and 3, where's that championship? They don't have one. So it makes a difference. And obviously, as you talked about, Eric, MacKinnon is hungry for more. So I really think on any given day you can make an argument that Nathan MacKinnon is number one. Reality is, though, on a year-to-year basis, you can't really argue against Connor McDavid being the number one player in the world. Honestly, on any given day, any of these 10 players could be the best that day. But day in, day out, on the ice, Connor McDavid's just better. He's the best player of this generation, in my opinion, by a decent margin. So maybe you guys have an argument, but to me, Connor McDavid is the prototype hockey player. He's pretty likely to have a top 5 all-time career when it's all said and done. So it's not even really that close at number one for me. But I know some other people, Eric, had MacKinnon at 1, so.
Potato, buddy. Honestly. I mean, it's like, I mean, man, oh, man. You don't have to be a fan of the Oilers. You don't have to be a fan of Connor. But after that loss in Game 7, then you had to feel for him. You know what I mean? Guys like that, we had Wayne on the show, right? They put so much pressure on themselves to lead their team to victory. And I think this guy puts a lot of pressure on himself to perform night in and night out. And just look at the All-Star game. There's no nights off for him. He just goes. And that's why a little bit the first 20 games or so this year was a little bit unusual, where him and Draisaitl couldn't do anything and the Oilers couldn't win a game. And it was kind of mind-boggling. But that's that he hasn't had a lot of those things in his career, those moments, you know what I mean, of 10, 12, 15 games. So he's always on. It looks so effortless. I'm still convinced you're born with some sort of freaking talent like that. Like, there's no way. Then we should all go, all the kids, and follow what this guy does. And since he was a little kid, to skate that much faster than everybody else. Why is his stride so much more powerful? Because it's ridiculous. As much as I said it's illegal to have those hands, like Mikko and Pasternak, not Pasternak, but Leon with their size, like McDavid, like, it's not fair. It's not fair to skate like that. Like, as a D, it's scary. And again, Mac is in the same position. That's why I say potato. They're arguably two best players in the National Hockey League, and we're very fortunate here in Denver. That's not biased. That's just a fact. And that a guy like that plays here, and then in Edmonton, they're very lucky to have a guy like McDavid. And again, we're not even talking about Kale and Draisaitl and Mikko. So, but to have those two guys in their respective cities, it's pretty phenomenal. And what it does to me when I look at that list right there, and it's just popping into my head right now, is, wow, am I excited for the Olympics? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, look at this. You got, a few Canadians, then you got a German, then you got a few Americans, right? You got a Slovak, a Czech, a Finn, and a Russian. It's pretty phenomenal. Like, it's very well diverse, for a top 10 player list. And it was a fun exercise, and it's certainly well deserved by those guys to be, and again, like you said, a lot of people would have, maybe not the same order, but you have the same players. But of course, there's always, like I said, those guys from 10 to 25 probably that could actually have votes into the top 10. So it was a fun exercise, but Connor McDavid deserves to be one or two, and same as Mac. And it was a fun exercise, like I said, to really compare the top players in the league.
I like this option to evaluate, could MacKinnon be at number one? And I have to give McDavid his flowers. He's changed the talent ceiling around the league. And so the skill upside for McDavid is unlike anyone else doing it, including MacKinnon, because of how consistently he's able to do it. It's effortless for him. I think MacKinnon is now stringing together seasons that are going to follow a similar track, but McDavid has been doing it for longer.
Yep.
The interesting thing is the leadership component. And as just an observer from the sidelines, I feel like McDavid actually took a really big step forward in his approach to leadership in this offseason, this postseason. I was really impressed by what I saw of him. And MacKinnon's approach to leadership is very different from most leaders generally, but also McDavid. And what I wonder is, what kind of influence does McDavid have in the room the way that we know MacKinnon has in the Avs room? He sets the tone for what the culture is in Colorado, to the point of, being critical if players drop a pass in practice, the way that players recover after games. It is pretty extreme, the influence that MacKinnon has had. And I think it is a direct reason for their success in the postseason, and ultimately what brought them to a cup. And I wonder, is that the thing that separates these two? The way that MacKinnon affects the locker room, I would classify as leadership. And is that the thing that separates him or allows him to be in a number one conversation?
Maybe. It's really hard for me to say one way or the other on these players, because, again, it all depends on how you look at it. If you look at the best player right now, this second, Nathan MacKinnon just won the Hart Trophy. You can put him at number one. If you look at the best player of the last 3 or 4 years, Connor McDavid has had incredible seasons. So is Nathan MacKinnon. So is Leon Draisaitl. Maybe he moves up the list a little bit. If you look at the course of their careers, I think it's pretty clearly McDavid has separated there. But at the same time, there's still a lot of career left for most of these guys. So that story could change over the next couple of years, too. It's a fluid situation, but there is no doubt everyone on this list, and even the honorable mentions, are unbelievable hockey players. So don't dishearten if you're maybe not number 1 or maybe you're number 11 or whatever it is. You've got a pretty good player on your team. We do have to wrap it up there, though. Thank you, everybody, for watching this one. A couple of notes. Friday, we're doing a Q&A with Eric, so I'll put out a tweet at DNVR_Avalanche today asking for you guys' questions about his playing days and his days in the front office work. So if you want to hear some NHLer stories, get your questions in for Eric. Tomorrow, I think we're ranking cup winners. I'm not sure. We'll talk about it. And then you guys can enjoy that show tomorrow, whatever it is. The other note, next week, we're moving back to our normal time of 2 p.m. So if you're an 11 a.m. ganger, you will be missed. But we are going back to our normal 2 p.m. show next week, so you can find us there like normal. That is it, though. We appreciate y'all, and we will talk to you on the next one.
We all silly like the mayor.